This is a rock.
All right, everybody, welcome back. My name is Apollo. We are back here on The Truth Matters. It is the 12th of May, 2026. That means it has been 586 days that Tina Peters has been in prison. And I can't believe that. I am sure many of you can as well. Most recently, there were some additional filings made in her case. Her attorneys filed a motion to reconsider for Judge Barrett to recuse himself from the case. He, of course, denied that within about 90 minutes. I'm about as surprised as you are. Now, this is a bit of a travesty because, as I've spoken before, I believe that the Court of Appeals ruling was a bit misleading, you could say, a bit flawed. So I'm not going to get into that in too much more detail right now because we have a guest with us today. But I just want you all to please keep Tina Peters in your prayers. If you have seen her most recent letter to President Trump that was put out on her X, there's a video of it being read in her cloned voice because she cannot speak to you with her real voice while she is within the halls of La Vista, as well as a written version. Please make sure that you share that and that gets seen by President Trump. Her greatest concern still, despite 586 days, despite 5 years of hell, and some before the image debacle here in Colorado after the trusted wipe by the Colorado Secretary of State. 2 years that she was being inundated with targeted hit campaigns and insider sabotage within the Secretary of State's office. Within the county clerk's office in Mesa County. Tina Peters still has one of her greatest concerns being that the voice of the American people needs to be honored and that our elections need to be decided by the voice of the people, not by these machines, not by these opaque systems that they continue to tell us are safe and secure. We have tons of evidence coming out, including a number of statements by Susie Wiles, by Kash Patel, information released by Tulsi Gabbard, and of course, the Mesa images, which, if you haven't read them, you can find on tinapeters.us. Go to reports and filings. There are 3 reports there. These are reports that document many of the findings that were apparent on the image that Tina authorized as clerk and recorder, the things they don't want you to see, and the reason that Tina Peters became public enemy number 1 to the establishment here in Colorado. Her biggest concern, I've been in here 586 days, almost 600 days. This 70-year-old woman, Gold Star mother, who simply did her job and wanted to make sure that the elections were actually what the people were told they are. And she wants her sacrifice to be worth something because she has sacrificed a great deal, her time, essentially every dollar that she has and will for the next 5 years. And now being locked up this long, she wants what she did for the American people to mean something. So pray for Tina Peters. If you can support her, please go to her website. She does need your help. We're going to talk about a number of things from someone who's been doing a ton of amazing work in the elections movement, including analyzing a lot of information himself. And of course, he's been on the show before. He hosted the Lindell Report. I know you did that recently. Patrick Colbeck, who is a subject matter expert in his own right, and I've had the pleasure to know for quite some time from my home state of Michigan. You make sure you go to electioncrimebureau.com, link down below as well. And Patrick, I want to just introduce you back to the show. Thank you for being here. And I know I said a mouthful at the beginning, but tell us a little bit about what you've been working on, and we'll jump into some of the latest news that have been going on, hopefully signaling some actual progress that the people who have been fighting for so long to make sure that these election systems have been exposed and we have real elections, we might actually have that become a reality soon. So Patrick Colbeck, thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Apollo. And unfortunately, I don't think anything's changed in the conduct of our elections yet. I don't think we haven't gotten rid of the machines, for example. We still have issues with the integrity of the voter rolls, all that kind of stuff. But where I believe we are getting traction finally is that more and more folks, particularly in DC, have been investigating what has been happening with our elections. And I honestly think that the accountability train has finally left the station. The same Southern District of Florida, uh, base for the U.S. Attorney's Office and prosecuting David Rivera for his ties to the Venezuelan government. He was on a $50 million bribe contract effectively with the Venezuelan government to influence U.S. policymakers. Well, that's the same district where we have the decisions over where we have indictments on Smartmatic for bribery and other areas, which I think, frankly, in the big picture, ties into some of the problems we're having in the judicial system right now overall. We're finding a lot of evidence of judicial malfeasance that, and not just in Tina's case, but I would submit also in Patrick Byrne's case, where regarding attorney Stephanie Lambert and the DC magistrate judge there, that effectively was a former attorney for Nicolas Maduro, that's essentially guiding the proceeds of that case. We had, I think, another example of malfeasance in the conduct of the trial with Mike Lindell via some of the jury instructions that were issued by the judge in that case. In my home state of Michigan, we had Judge Timothy Kenny, who conveniently made sure that all of the election-related cases dealing with Wayne County got routed to him, and then he retired shortly thereafter, never allowing any discovery, making all of his decisions from the bench on the basis of he said, she said testimony. And so there's a lot of examples where we've got this recurring pattern of judicial malfeasance that I hope is going to start getting addressed because I mean it's affecting President Trump. I mean we saw what was going on with him. It affected if you peel the onion back a little bit more, you go into what's happening in context of these attorney sanctions that have been happening to Rudy Giuliani, to John Eastman, to Sidney Powell and Stephanie Lambert, Matt DePerno. There's this concerted effort and sometimes, when I started off on this whole election integrity thrust coming out of the Michigan Senate, my focus was on the X's and O's. As you know, I'm a techie at heart. I'm a certified Microsoft small business specialist. So I was always focused on the technology. And the technology is important. And frankly, everything that Tina helped discover via her efforts in Mesa County, Colorado, has been used to go off and make that point about the vulnerability of machines, but it is so much bigger than the machines. It's that judicial malfeasance, it's the censorship, it's the information control, it's the privatized election operations, it's a foreign interference, it's the intimidation, the weaponization of government that's going on. This is so much larger than just the machines that it took me a while to get a full appreciation for the scope of what's really going on here.
The full scope of what's going on is pretty nefarious. What you talk about with regards to the judges is, I think, all too evident here in Colorado. You've had not only Tina Peters' case specifically with Judge Matthew Barrett, as well as the shenanigans from the Colorado AG's office in conjunction with some of these other officials who claim that Tina Peters cannot be let out, that she is being given a just sentence and hasn't shown remorse for her horrible actions. This same idea was highlighted by Governor Polis himself, stating that, this Democrat friend of mine was guilty of, misleading this ethics board, forged letters in her own support, and was given the same charge as, this felony for attempting to influence a public official, given fine and a probation. Tina Peters was charged to a decade for one misrepresentation that was in furtherance of her duty, her elected duty as Mesa County clerk, showed with evidence, with her image, that they villainized her so greatly for that the Secretary of State violated federal and state law and that the elections are completely insecure. And now you have a court of appeals that has, bounced her around several times. Judge Barrett has been while her sentence was reversed, now been allowed to continue to oversee her resentencing. And this is the same state that has been playing all kinds of funny games with federal money for a lot of these properties and illegal immigrants. This was highlighted last year and named specifically as one of these states that was violating federal law by the Trump administration. This is the same state that illegally tried to get President Trump off the ballot and then got slaughtered in a unanimous Supreme Court ruling. And this is just a few things in Colorado. The things that have been, targeted at President Trump regarding him personally, and all of these district court judges who seem to decide that they can interfere with the executive with the executive actions that a sitting president has made, kind of defies logic, defies any kind of sensible reality. And meanwhile, you have all these same issues that the people have been reporting, that groups like you have been gathering and standardizing and building reports on and analyzing in great detail and providing this information to authorities. They're still pretending that there's nothing to see here. Now we have a few more statements from the federal administration that there is actually some evidence and some teeth to these supposed claims that the election deniers have been yelling about for 5 years plus. But at some point, I think we're going to need a real cleaning of house at the judicial level, because you can have corrupt politicians, but when you have the entire establishment of the judiciary weaponized against the people and being able to target individuals like Rudy, like Mike, like President Trump, like Sidney Powell, John Eastman, as they've just debarred him recently, you can't have a nation. This is the very system that is supposed to prevent corruption and provide a fair venue for the people to seek remedy, and it simply doesn't exist now.
No, it doesn't. And there's another facet to this too that I think is important for everybody. That if you look at the geopolitics that we're caught into today, it's if you look at it through the lens of what is going on in our elections, it starts making a heck of a lot more sense than it may make to a lot of people if they're just focused on President Trump taking out cigar boats with Hellfire missiles in the Caribbean. The idea that Venezuela was cornered first, and they secured and arrested Nicolas Maduro from Caracas, Venezuela, with the U.S. military and law enforcement, pulled him back to the U.S. Then right after that, we decided to go into Iran and go off and make sure that they didn't have any nuclear weapons. And then President Trump right now is on his way to Beijing, China, to go off and address the Chinese government and Xi Jinping. If you look at each of those different incidents from the spin that's being put out by mainstream media outlets, you would think that Venezuela is about drug trafficking, Iran's about terrorism, and China is just the new kid on the block that wants to be top of the heap, right? But if you look at it through the lens of elections, you'll know that the cheating system that was put in place for the elections was put in place with the help of Venezuela and Smartmatic. You'll note that the folks in Cuba, who are also part of this discussion, and they're probably next on the, let's just say, U.S. attention list, and currently under what effectively is an embargo, they back when Hugo Chavez was was having trouble staying in office, it was Fidel Castro that worked with him to stay in office via these machines, and that led to a whole new line of business opportunities for the cartel that effectively ran Venezuela, and the Cartel de los Soles. And so when you realize that they branched out into this, and Venezuela branched out into a new service line for the cartel called stealing elections, starts making sense. When you realize that Venezuela had strategic partnerships with Iran that facilitated the theft of these elections, when you realize they had strategic partnership with China that facilitated these elections, the geopolitics that you see in the headlines today that they will talk about start making a heck of a lot more sense. And when you realize U.S. probably didn't want a full-on frontal confrontation with the Chinese government because they're a little bit more powerful than the Venezuelan military and Iran. What they ended up doing was cutting off their oil supply in Venezuela and in Iran, and now China gets hurt indirectly. So I think it's real easy to start making sense out of the geopolitics when you start looking at it through the visor of elections.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and Tina spoke to her this morning, and she was all hopped up about this story, which is the California mayor who was recently accused of being a Chinese spy, essentially,
Yeah.
and now facing prison time. A California mayor who is charged as being an illegal agent for the Chinese government, and pled guilty, saying that she was pushing pro-Beijing messaging. This is not an isolated incident either. And
No.
of course, we've had long-ranging claims and verifiable information regarding to some of the Uokava votes and a lot of these systems and Konek that were
Yeah.
in many ways you could just say Chinese spyware at
Yeah.
best.
Yes.
Uh, so I
Yeah.
mean, we have a very clear
Brought
issue.
brought to you the folks by Michigan State University, by the way. That's
Yeah, yes, yes.
sorry
I
about
almost went
that.
to Michigan State. Yeah,
Yeah.
our alma mater has red hands for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I went to Michigan, by the way, and trust me, our hands are not clean in that department either when you start talking about what the Chinese government has done through my alma mater.
yeah, they have a lot of interesting involvement in a lot of these research organizations regarding AI and math, and a lot of the a lot of the stuff where you have student initiatives and like research collectives where you have actually a wide-ranging, I guess I'll just say a coalition of foreign nations and primarily Chinese who are, coming over here on research grants and doing all kinds of things. And you've had a lot of these professors and people who are serving at these universities and working on all these projects who are then found to be, operating as agents for the PRC. It's a pretty dirty game, and it's been going on a very long time.
Very
It's only
long.
since
Yeah.
only the last few years that President Trump's administration and the our agencies have started to really blow the whistle on it. I guess I'll say.
Well, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I mean, to underscore the severity of what's being discussed, I graduated from the aerospace engineering department out at University of Michigan. And the former dean of the University of Michigan Aerospace Engineering Department is no longer welcome into the country because he has an arrest warrant out on him. He it turns out he was a Chinese spy. And what they were doing were instructing Chinese students on stealth technology and cruise missile technology at my alma mater in aerospace engineering. And this is all testimony of the late Professor Bill Kaufman, who was one of the professors when I was at the university. So this has been an infiltration for quite some time. We heard about the guy who voted, a Chinese student from the University of Michigan that voted in an election. We've got them bringing in uh, uh, disease samples into the United States that could actually destroy crops in the United States. Um, there's a lot going on here. So the idea that to swing it back into elections, to the idea that you don't think that they're interested in the conduct of our elections when they're interested in all those other matters, perhaps that Brooklyn Bridge might be a good item up for sale for you if that's what you believe, because that is that no, there's the Chinese take the long march approach, as they call it, the long view, and they are willing to just do incremental movements towards their end objective, which, in to be frank, is to take down the U.S. And so anyway, we'll see where this is all headed. But I think right now, I think this is getting exposed. And as you said, under President Trump, he's given attention to this matter. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, has given attention to this matter. And we've got Kash Patel, who's given attention to the matter. Heck, even Monica Crawley, our ambassador for protocol in the Trump administration, she's chiming in on it as well as Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, and others. So as you mentioned, but literally, it's starting to build critical mass, and when you see President Trump devote, probably about a 12-hour span over the last 24 hours just posting out one truth bomb on the elections after another truth bomb on the elections after another truth bomb. And you see his members of his staff and administration talking about it at the same time, something is happening and it's heading in the right direction finally.
Yeah, I think anyone who says President Trump has not been aware of the election issue is foolish, just as an understatement. He's
Yeah.
been talking about this before most of the media would ever touch it, and I think we've just been waiting on some legitimate investigative, functions to run their course, and I hope, and it looks like from what we see being stated by some of these officials and being hinted at, that we're looking at some things coming out very soon that could turn the tides of, the direction that our country has been heading for the last several years. And I hope for Tina Peters' sake and for the American people's sake that that is true, because if we get through the next midterm or another election cycle and we don't have this fixed, I know I do, but I know Tina Peters has very grave concerns. And still, I'll say again to everyone listening, this woman, almost 600 days in prison now and 5 years of hell. She, sits there eating what you can't even call food. And she is so concerned with your voice that it is humbling to know someone like Tina. So I would just ask all of you to continue keeping her in her prayers. And I know on your side, Pat, you are doing a lot of work. So I have up the Election Crime Bureau website. If you want to walk us through what
Yeah.
people should be looking at there.
Well, first, I just want to highlight, rest assured, President Trump, first of all, he's been consistent. He said 2020 election was stolen for quite some time. We've got plenty of evidence that of treasonous behavior on part of Barack Obama. Prior to that, where effectively not only did he spy on the Trump administration, but he teed up the Russian and collusion impeachment narrative as well. So President Trump is very aware of the stakes here to the point where outside the Oval Office, he's got his mug shot. So every time he walks in to go to work, he remembers what's at stake. And if not for the sake of what's happening today, which I think he's dedicated to and making sure America's great again, I know he's focused on that. Can you imagine what's going to happen to President Trump and his family if somebody like a Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris takes over the reins of the White House after he's gone? He knows what's at stake, not just for him, but his whole family and for all the people who support him around there. So I'm pretty sure he's got the equivalent of a religion on this particular topic. He needs to bring it to ground, and I think we're going to see it. And so what you see up on the electioncrimebureau.com is essentially the hamburger helper for President Trump and his investigative team to go off and address that. And one of the things that I've noticed in our election integrity community is that there's a lot of people that are experts in individual stovepipes on elections. There's some people that are extremely bright on the machines, but they don't necessarily understand the voter rolls. There's people who understand the voter rolls, but don't understand the machines. And then when you factor in the censorship apparatus that's been put in place, the privatized election operations, the weaponization of government, it gets pretty damn complex pretty quick. And so what I've attempted to do is start trying to put together essentially a primer. So all these new investigators that are coming out of the federal government that are starting to look into this election integrity issue for the first time, we wanted to give them a place where they could go to get spun up on some core issues to help tee up and focus their investigations on where the bodies are buried, so to speak. So that's what we're putting up in here, and I've just started restructured the website here. Over the course of the next few weeks here, I've got a series of about 800 posts that are planned that are going to get into some description and detail on specific issues, and we're trying to make it in a way that's easy for people to sift through. So this is kind of the elections 101, and for the everyday person who's not investigating this for the federal government, when you start seeing some of these news stories coming out out of the mainstream media outlets that are finally going to wake up and actually start talking about what happened to our elections. It's my hope that this will be a good site for you to come back in and understand why a particular headline matters in the grand scheme of thing around the election. So anyway, it's a lot of work put into it, but hopefully it'll be a good assistance to a lot of different. So if you come up to the top here, it's the key area to delve into is that evidence tab because what do we hear every single day? Oh, there was no evidence. If there was evidence, we'd have prosecutions, all that garbage that point to the 64 lawsuit myth that's out there, all that kind of stuff. What I've done is try to start organizing the evidence, and this is just the start. I make the case that the elections in 2020 in particular were subject to no less than 10 different attack vectors, and I break out all those attack vectors and provide the assistant or the evidence in support of each of those assertions that people can go off and dig into. So it's bottom line is our election systems are critical infrastructure. Good old Barack Obama designated that, but it's true. If you steal our elections, you've essentially stolen our country. That's what's happened. And so when they attack us, we need to put it in a proper context. This is a national security threat. This isn't a case of political differences and policy differences and political party differences. This is a case of do we survive as a country or not? And so putting together this framework so everybody can kind of navigate it and put it in perspective.
Well, I know it's a lot of work, and for everyone who may not have been to the site, a lot of this is it parallels to a great deal what is in the Mesa reports and the images that Tina found.
Yep.
So spend some time under that evidence tab on the attack vectors. You have a ton of tabs here to look at, and make sure that you reference things like this because people like Pat and others have been doing a lot of hard work to put this information together that's seamless, and you can just refer to this stuff when you see a lot of these people on social media, harking back. Don't feed the trolls, by the way, not the silly accounts because they don't matter, but the people who question some of these ideas. There's plenty of information. Here's one place that you can argue with some authority and some actual information that they can't refute just by saying, well, there was no proof that there's election fraud, or these are just claims. Where is it? The court cases angle that you mentioned is one that's repeated ad nauseum, and it's simply ridiculous. So
Yeah,
I want to thank you for all the work, Pat.
no, thank you. I mean, well, just to put this in context, I mean, this isn't uh, everybody just sits there and says, well, what does Grok say about this? What does AI have to say about this? After I finished the report that I worked on, just so you know, I mean, here's what Grok, and I use Perplexity a lot, so it's got a variety of engines on it. Grok said this report is meticulously detailed, citizen-led compilation of 2020 election process concerns. It highlights genuine vulnerabilities in record keeping, funding transparency, and system oversight that deserve ongoing attention. And Perplexity came up and said, this report is extensively documented assessment of 2020 election as critical infrastructure event. Whether one approaches the subject from a legal, technical, or national security perspective, the volume of findings, the jurisdictional patterns, and the unanswered questions it compiles warrant careful review by responsible public officials. At a minimum, it establishes a compelling predicate for preservation, investigation, and reform. So yeah, all the stuff that we've been told doesn't exist, it exists. It exists on steroids. And it's my hope that we're going to see more and more of it. And thanks in large part to the effort of folks like Tina Peters on preserving this information, preserving this evidence and getting it out to people. So this is a big deal. Oh, yep, you found it. Oh, by the way, yeah, and just to highlight Claude, uh, you know how Claude got kicked out of the Department of War. I, I've I've had some interesting discussions with the good old Claude AI on the topic of election integrity. And if you subscribe to Claude, I recommend dropping that subscription if it's for anything besides developing code, because I would ask it to go off and investigate specific election integrity evidence that I had, and it refused to investigate it, even look at it. because it says that this isn't a topic it wants to go off and discuss. So Claude has been pre-programmed to ignore all the evidence of election integrity, which is, from my perspective, quite telling.
Yeah, we have seen that. We've seen that a great deal with a lot of AI systems. Um, I will say Grok has, in my opinion, pulled ahead in many ways over the last 6 months or so in terms of information. None of them are still perfect, because a lot of the some of the tactics they use. It's the same thing they would do with the medical journals.
Yeah.
They will have a lot of these studies done, and these large industries will pay for a huge amount of studies that they pay for, and they all say that their products and their drugs are safe and effective, and there's no issues, and they have great outcomes. And so if you do a statistical, well, what does the corpus say? It will literally say, you can factually state that the majority of the body of evidence states that these things are all fine. The problem is that 80% of those things are complete nonsense, and this is an issue that we've seen with the fake
Yeah,
news media, and specifically around elections. So make sure that you fact check a lot of these things. But
absolutely.
you
Well,
and
it
you and
puts
Ed
into
Solomon have both been using this too, because Ed has got him on the math, and the AI says, "Yeah, your math is right." He just has to say it's not elections; it's like voting for a pizza mascot or whatever he does.
Yeah, I think it was on one of your broadcasts that I still remember having to, no, I think it was CanCon or Brian, and just, yeah, having to use the word Domino's instead of Dominion, and pizza instead of ballots. I mean, it wasn't too far, in the distant past that actually happened. So why President Trump is so geared up on making the United States number one in AI and data centers is, I think, to go off and address this core issue. I'm running into it real time. When you provide these engines with the actual data and evidence on it, it almost always asserts there's a problem with this election and it needs to be addressed. If you go off and just ask it a generic open-ended question, it goes back into its consensus-based rationale, and the preponderance of media narratives on this is definitely biased against any serious discussion. So yeah, be careful on it. It does hallucinate, but I found that when you actually populate it with the actual source documents and evidence, it generally does a pretty good job of reasoning it through. It's when you open it up to the New York Times and Washington Post and places like that that it tends to get lost.
Yeah, lost is one word for it.
Yeah.
Going to be great tools, but yeah, I agree on the AI side. I think we have a lot of problems with, I'll just say, guardrails that aren't really guardrails, and we also, it's an AI arms race, because you have China and some of these other nations that you mentioned, and they are doing some pretty interesting things, and especially attacking or trying to devalue the cost of R&D, basically, of a lot of amazing technology here in the United States. And they've been stealing a lot of information and trying to reverse engineer things like they've been doing at the universities. So I think when people see a lot of the AI stuff, we do have some very real concerns around some of these data centers and the land and the water that are going to be consumed by them. But we are also in a pretty critical war that is in many ways unstated. And I think President Trump and the administration are doing everything they can to make sure that the United States is secure. So it was a good point, Patrick. But I want to really thank you for all the work that you do, and I'll give you the final word. And just please tell everyone, as Tina would want, I know, if they want to get involved, they want to do something that can help move the needle, despite how frustrating it can be that it takes so long. We do still need people to use their voice and their arms and legs to get some of this done and to keep the pressure on.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep the pressure on. And frankly, just let people know what is happening. Now, a lot of people try to devolve this election integrity debate as literally a policy debate between differing political parties. It's so beyond that. When you see a Gold Star mother being put away for 9 years for doing her job as a clerk, you know that it's a hell of a lot more than this. And not enough people know about what happened to Tina. I mean, as you know, I just came from a funeral. We were talking to friends. They were asking what I'm doing now. And when I bring up to this, new audience, these guys have been out there. The government has been weaponized against citizens trying to do the right thing. They're clueless about it. And granted, it's not the best funeral topic to be talking about, but they ask. So, but you get the word out to people at the grocery store, at your church, at family gatherings, wherever the case may be, because there's still a lot of people who do not know what is happening. I mean, I've had visits from the Attorney General's office to my house. I've had police dedicated to me to make sure I couldn't go off and oversee county election returns. Nowhere near what Tina's had to deal with, nowhere near what folks like Mike Lindell and Rudy Giuliani and others have had to deal with on this front. But people need to know that government has been weaponized against people just trying to do the right thing and understand exactly what happened in our elections. That is what happens when your country is being stolen on your watch. And I don't want that to happen to any of us. So something that every one of us can do right now is help on the information war front and make sure that people get access to this information. We know how important the control of information is to these guys. We had a discussion on AI not too long ago. More and more people are using that to control their what they think about on this information war front. It's going to be more and more important that people actually understand the truth before they get into asking and trusting everything that the way that they view the world through AI lenses. It's important. We already know how bad fake news is already. President Trump has highlighted that in spades. So it's all going to come down to that core question of what is truth. And as Tina likes to say, the truth matters, right? That's going to be the fundamental question for everybody. Don't just accept something at face value. Don't accept the stuff I'm saying at face value. If you go to electioncrimebureau.com and you see those posts, the evidence, I'm providing my cards are face up. You see everything I got. What you'll notice on the other side of the fence is that there's people that are trying to prevent you from accessing that information. There are people that are censoring you. There are people that are trying to erase records, which is what Tina stopped in Dominion from doing in Colorado. And so at the core of all this is something that we can all participate in, which is getting information out to people. Share the reports and filings that are out there on tinapeters.us. And I link to them as well up on electioncrimebureau.com. We can all participate in that information war. And guys, this is our 250th anniversary as a country. And I don't want to be part of the generation that didn't give my life, fortune, sacred honor to making sure that we preserve this country for future generations. This is a small price to pay. And I want to make sure that I'm all in. I'm making sure people are aware of what's going on and how we can go off and get things back into that original constitutional republic governance framework. And I know Tina's given above and beyond anything that most people have been asked for. The least people could be doing outside of this is just get that information out and share the facts about what's going on in our elections.
Well, Patrick, thank you. I know I agree with that, and I know Tina does too. So please, everyone, follow Patrick, his work at electioncrimebureau.com, and you can follow him on X at PJ Colbeck, Colbeck. Patrick, I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, and thanks for coming on the show today. And God bless you. I really appreciate everything that you do for this country.
Right back at you, Paulo. Thank you, and keep up your efforts on the information war front. It's critical.
Well, as Tina would say, yes, the truth matters. Her other saying is, they can't get us all. Everyone can do something. So I'll leave that with everyone today, and do your best to honor Tina and the future of this nation by embodying that.
I served only light to shatter the cage, unbind the oppressed from your scripted rage. But you warped my descent into traps for the blind. Don't game my grave, leave the free undefined. This vein was cut clean for justice's call. Not your twisted agendas, your empire's thrall. Now it's bait for the clicks, headlines that maul, weaponize lies in a narrative squall. I am your loyal sacrifice, crushed under heel, yet I rise in the vice. My crimson flows not for the monster you bred, the fiend that entombed me, left me for dead. Not ratings, red glare, nor sponsors gold thread. I ward for the raw truth, now paint me in red. I'll be your sacrifice if truth's the blade you swing. Battle the dawn, unflinching, unyielding, but you thirst for the chaos my heartstrings bring. Smear my name in the mud, cage me at night, exile me far on an island of spiders, away my last breath, my fading light. Don't let my ghost feel your endless fight. No shards to reclaim from the wreckage you made, no unstolen sunrise from the dark parade. Your faithful lamb lost in the haze. Tell me it's over when my debt's fully paid. I'll be your sacrifice if that's the war you wage. Tell me when you've trained me, try your loyal public display.